Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Park show with the National Parks Arts Foundation, who are known for their amazing artist residencies in parks across the country. Welcome, everyone. Very excited today because, the National Parks Arts Foundation, their artists in residencies have spanned the country from Dry Tortugas National Park off in the Florida Keys all the way to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. In the middle, we've got in northern New Mexico, Chaco, Fort Union, Aztec ruins even at one point, and we've got Gettysburg. That has been a historic residency for years. And one of the artists that we interviewed back in 2020, when she was actually on site, is Queen Esther. Now, you can go to Queen Esther. It's queen-esther.com and check out what she does. She is it's just, there's nonstop of creativity, whether she's a producer, an actor, performer, singer, songwriter, musician. There is no stopping. And I would say she is a magician of storytelling. And when she went to Gettysburg, I remember it was a very impactful time. And I remember that interview where she was feeling all the feels of what you feel when you go to Gettysburg. And it was a few years later that Nancy and I got to go there. It was like in the middle of the pandemic. And they kind of let people now get out of their houses. And I remember almost going to my knees in overwhelming just emotions of what occurred in Gettysburg and how many lives were connected in this story and the Civil War. We actually had to go and just sit down at one point. And this is just in one day. Queen Esther was there for a month. And I remember when she called in on the show, all her feelings for so many different reasons. And I'm very excited because she has now produced an album. It will be out next February, and it's called Blackbirding. But her first single is out today, and it's called Hold Steady. It's awesome. You can go get it on Bandcamp. But Queen Esther, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. Thank you. This is awesome.
It is. And when I talk about all the feels and the emotions, they're heavy emotions. We're not talking about giddy yippee-yay, right? These are heavy emotions. And when I talked about being there in Gettysburg and that overwhelming, like a whole month of that, did you feel a month of overwhelming or did you feel any blue sky joy?
Blue sky joy amidst the heavy overwhelming, if that makes any sense. You have to remember that more than 50,000 people died almost simultaneously on what was basically farmland out there in the middle of nowhere in Gettysburg. And they didn't die because they got shot and they fell down and they died. They died because they were wounded and they were too wounded to get up and walk and go get help. They just literally laid there until they passed away because no help was coming. That happened to a lot of soldiers. Now, Gettysburg, that's just so pivotal in so many ways because the Civil War could have ended right there. It could have ended right there if General Meade had followed the troops as they went back to the Potomac, to cross the Potomac to go back down south. If they had followed them and wiped them out, that would have been the end of the war right there. Would have ended. So many lives saved, but they didn't. And it went on for another 2 years. But consider this. In Vietnam, during the Vietnam War, something like, I guess it started in the late 50s, went on till like 76, something like that, 77, something like 18 years, I suppose. In that time, something like 50,000, 55,000 soldiers died, American soldiers. Terrible, awful, right?
Very.
Like more than 50,000 soldiers died at Gettysburg in 3 days. In 3 days.
That's amazing.
Sandwich all of the 18 years of loss within a 3-day period. And we're not just talking about the soldiers, we're talking about horses. They could smell the dead bodies all the way to Harrisburg, 45 miles away. So you really have to put this into perspective. Now, on a spiritual level, they say, whoever they is, there's always a they, right? Well, when you have people dying simultaneously at such an alarming rate and so violently, and so many all at once, it opens up a kind of spiritual vortex.
Yeah.
Has closed it. So when you go out there, that's a part of all of what you're feeling. You're feeling some sort of spiritual rip in time, if you will, that has happened because so many souls were lost at the same time.
Mhm. And then
Something
going
that's
through
something
the cemetery, I felt that too. I mean, also all the unnamed, unmarked resting spaces.
Gettysburg is basically an open air cemetery. It's basically what it is. You're talking about tens of thousands of men who basically laid on the ground and died. And a lot of them were put in makeshift graves temporarily. We don't know that we got all of them. We don't know. For a long time after the war, people went there and they just scavenged bullets and bones and all kinds of things. I mean, they've made it illegal for you to go out there and take anything, but that doesn't mean there isn't anything out there. That doesn't mean they didn't miss a body. And so that's why those grounds are hallowed. They are sacred.
Yeah, I feel so weird about when you go to places like that. I don't even want to step on like I just feel like our footprints, you don't know what you're really walking over. You know what I mean? There's like a story in every footprint you take in a place like that. It's someone rushed over there. You don't know if they fell down there, if they died there. I had a friend who through her ancestry, went to Gettysburg, travel writer Joe Clark, traced her family history to, I think it was her great grandfather, great great grandfather. I'm going to get it wrong, but Joe, sorry. But she went and she even took a horse ride so she could feel what it was like. He was on horseback and he got shot and killed. And she was able to go to that area where he was shot and killed, which is like, it's still very traumatic, even though you weren't there. You feel it. And she certainly did, being there, to feel where her ancestor was. What led you to on this residency, for everyone listening, that, because it's a month long. And I think what's so great about the National Parks Arts Foundation is that they are really becoming well known also for women being able to go off and do this, whether they want to bring their family and kids or go off as a solo artist. Did you feel that?
Well, I'm a Southerner, first of all. First and foremost, I'm not a Yankee. I am from the South. I grew up in Atlanta, and I am a daughter of the Low Country, South Carolina Low Country, on both sides of my family. Both my parents are from that area, and I grew up there as well. And it really resonated with me all my life. In Atlanta, which is a seat of so much Black progress in America, I was taught these things from a very, very early age from a Black perspective. And as I grew, I realized that everyone wasn't necessarily getting the same information that I was getting. And I needed to reconcile that. So often, well, you know what? In a way, I guess I could blame my mother because she taught me how to read when I was 3. And by the time I was 5, I was reading with the comprehension and skill of children that were more than twice my age. So my library card was always very precious to me. And being able to go to the library and just pick out any book I wanted to read was a really big deal for me when I was very small. So I would have little projects and things that I would research. You remember encyclopedias? Sit around and read encyclopedias for fun. I thought it was really great that I could just pick a letter and just get lost in those books. And there would be this wide variety of information based on, the alphabet that I could just, get lost in. So after having done that habitually as a little kid for a really long time, I got used to, and also as an actor, as a theater actor, you do a lot of research to build character. And as a playwright, to build out characters and to flesh out the story that you're telling. Because every little bit of research informs everything that you're going to do, and it makes the person that you're bringing to the stage in the form of this character, it makes them come to life in a 4-dimensional way. The more research you do, the better your acting is, the more informed your acting is. Theater actors do that. Not necessarily all film actors, but theater actors do that. You kind of have to, or things fall apart. So the idea of research has always been near and dear to me. Very important part of my upbringing or what have you. After a certain point, with things politically going the way that they were going in this country, I began to wonder where it all came from. What was the thread that unraveled the sweater, or what was the thread that was holding this together in the first place? And I realized a lot came together on the battlefield at Gettysburg, namely that it could have ended the way that it converged, the way that, for example, the South had never really lost a battle. Up until that point, they hadn't left the South. They had the home court advantage. So you had these Yankees going down there and fighting them on their ground. And that's very easy to do when you know the terrain and when you know how to get around and this and that. Gettysburg was the first time that they had to actually leave home and leave that home court advantage and go and fight in terrain that they were unfamiliar with, that they didn't really know. They didn't scout it out. This was the first time that they had a significant seismic loss. And these white people in the South, suddenly it dawned on them, hey, we might not win this thing. This whole Civil War thing might not be as easy to win as we thought it would. This is the first moment that it dawned on them that the outcome, and the losses that they suffered, at the outcome of the Civil War, 1/4, like 26% of all of the men of a certain age, of a military age, were gone. They lost yeah, that's a big loss. That's a really big loss. But this was a big loss. It was almost even on both sides, the number of soldiers that were lost. But this was a real wake-up call for them.
And it was also different, too, because the Civil War was not just about civil rights, right? It was also on property. There were just so many different, arms to why this war happened.
The war happened because of slavery. They were fighting over slavery. They were fighting because there were certain states that were joining the Union, joining the United States, and they had to figure out if those states were going to own slaves or not. Are we going to keep perpetuating slavery? There were some states like Kansas that were, maybe we will, maybe we won't. A lot of in-between states like Maryland, they wanted to solve that once and for all. That's really what the war was about. It was about states' rights to own slaves. And
yeah, that was pushing people. But I wanted to get into that because your album is called Blackbirding. And I don't know how many of us know what blackbirding is.
Well, that's interesting. I actually created a listener's guide for the album that people will be able to download. If they go to Bandcamp, they can download it. But I'm going to make that available for everyone, so that they can know what each song is about and how it relates to the battlefield and the imagery on the album. All of that is explained. So blackbirding is the practice of kidnapping free Black folk and dragging them off into slavery. This happened a lot with children. It happened a lot with free Black folk from Philadelphia, New York. Think 12 Years a Slave.
I was going to say Solomon Northup. Yeah.
That's what happened. He got blackbirded. And these are people, in many instances of means. You send your child out to run an errand and you don't see them again for 20 years. It was utterly illegal. The people who did this were called blackbirders. And the cops were in on it, of course. The police were in on it. They had blackbirders. They had clubs for them. It was extremely lucrative. I mean, look at it this way. You see a poster for a runaway slave and it says $500. $500 then was like 40 grand.
Yeah. 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 Right. And so it's human trafficking within our own country, right?
Yes. Amongst people who were free, who were 100% free. In many instances, they had never been enslaved. So a part of the campaign for the South in Gettysburg was to blackbird the residents that were there. They wanted to, and this was a directive from General Robert E. Lee. He actually put that in writing, go forth and go get them. And many of them were dragged away. These residents of Gettysburg who were white watched their Black neighbors get dragged away, never to be seen or heard from again.
Wow. And that's the thing too, Gettysburg. And I love to bring this up because Gettysburg was a community with people living in there. And then here is this war in your backyard. And when you go around to all the battle sites around Gettysburg in the region, right? I mean, some of these battlefields are taking over people's farms and and the way they were fighting back then was just like brutal as heck, right? I mean, all battles are brutal, right? But just like, let's go up and just shoot each other in the face, And you've got to think about the families, the kids, everyone that's involved on the other side of it going through this. It's traumatic. And battles move down in our bodies, DNA wise. That's just my belief. I don't believe that.
No, it's scientifically proven that trauma is passed down. Yes. There's a couple of
Yeah.
things you have to remember. First of all, Black people weren't allowed to own property, but that varied state to state. And Pennsylvania was one of the places where, yes, Black people could legally own property.
Wow.
Much property that they fought on was owned by Black people. As a matter of fact, the biggest loss that was
Hmm.
suffered by the South was owned by a Black man named David Wills. That was happened on property owned by that Black man. A Black man's property is where they suffered up to then their greatest defeat.
I did not know that. And I don't, well, I think things are changing in our parks right now too. And this is why I really love what the National Parks Arts Foundation does in this artist residency is. And I know that there's this initiative of taking the parks outside the parks because of so much human foot traffic and footprint in parks that are biodiversity sensitive and things like that. The artists, what they paint, what they do in film or dance or an album like yours, poetry, books, you name it, it transcends. That ripple effect goes global and can be timeless, depending on their art. And I think like your album, what I really cherish, there's so many things. Like I even think I said to you, like, this is a masterpiece. And I'm not kidding around. I do a lot in music and I am a musician and a songwriter, and I know what is good, honestly, just from all the experience I have had in it with so many musicians and interviews and listening. And the thing is, the lyrics are incredible. I wish Maya Angelou could listen to this album. I'm sure she is. You transcend with this album. You bring songs in that are harking the past and give you the feeling of what has gone down in so many different circumstances, different songs for different things. You span genres, which is wonderful, and you're going to surprise people. Just like, Beyonce surprised people. What's a Black woman doing with singing country? Go back in our history, y'all. And so you span genres in music. There is no pigeonholing in this. But if we're going to talk about birds, it is called Blackbirding. But you have a way in this album that you are going to the past, to the present, and you're transcending eras. You're transcending that this can go out beyond the park's boundaries. Some people will never get to Gettysburg, but could be like just real history buffs and into it all and know all the timelines and everything, but not get there for, wherever they are in the world, or could be, maybe not even afford to go there depending on where they are, or all kinds of reasons. So this gives you the emotional attachment to people. And so many times, even when we are now watching what's going on in the world on our TV screens, you see so many people died from this, that. It becomes numbers. But the arts bring the emotion into those numbers. It makes a number of a person an actual human being with a heartbeat. And so I think that's important. You've done so many of that, the transcending part. So right now, too, our parks are going through a situation of signs being taken down, a lot of it to do with Black history, quite frankly. And so I think, again, your album is part of those important things in our history that will keep history alive and the true story out there, while some of our parks are not going to have the true stories or just not have the stories. There's a wonderful initiative of a lady putting a website together where people can send in signs so we don't lose the sign information. And so that you can go to a park, look up that park and see the signs so you can see what was right, wrong, all of that stuff. Do you feel that about the transcendence that I'm talking about with your album, and even this residency about the power of the arts? After all, everybody, is Arts and Humanities Month. Just saying, the power of the arts is about almost preserving the stories of cultures around the world. And our parks are mostly historic sites, not just all natural beauty, though Gettysburg is beautiful and pastoral and all those wonderful words. There's a lot of history in there. So yeah, do you feel that is the important part of these residencies, is being able to create something that's going to transcend?
Well, I think Teddy Roosevelt had the right idea. I can't remember the exact statistic, but there are hundreds of millions of acres of unexplored forest and flora and fauna in this country that are preserved and should remain preserved, first of all. So I think he had the right idea with that. Secondly, sometimes the only real way that people can experience these things is through art. And I'm the kind of generative artist that really feeds off of something like that. And I really want to make art that's accessible to all. I want you to hear a song like, I Feel So Alive, the song on the album. And I want you to feel like you're on that battlefield. And if that happens when you hear that song, then my job is done. I think that the campaign of misinformation history teaches us that can't last. We've been
Yeah.
through this before. We went through this so often. Does anyone remember Woodrow Wilson? There's been a
I do.
campaign of misinformation about Black people ever since we stopped working for free.
Yeah.
You know, we know and understand exactly who we are, what we've done, and what the deal is. Each one, reach one, teach one, and that everyone else doesn't necessarily know. After a certain point, learning and knowing these things is on you. I think an app that would allow you, in the same way that you have Google Translate, you could have an app that shows you what was there in terms of signage, or that gives you information in real time. That would be perfect. That would be ideal. That's something to think about. There's all kinds of ways to get around these problems, but they don't
Yeah.
last. It's like a wave on the ocean. They do this and they're doing this, and then the wave will move in the other direction and erase all of it.
That's exactly what's happening.
But the wave will go in the other direction and put it all back again.
Yeah. But the
Happens
arts
in
are
history, but-
constant. The
Well,
arts
yeah.
are constant.
The arts are constant, but it really depends on who that artist is. There's a lot of people out there that call themselves artists, and they're making art that doesn't necessarily speak to any of this.
Or it's being made by AI.
Being made by AI. People tend to go where the money is. If, for example, this were a successful project, you'd probably have a lot of people running around trying to recreate whatever this is. You know what I mean?
No, and that's really true. It is. It's really true. The album, I feel like I love that you have listening notes for people because they can sit and really simmer with it, and really get into what happened in Gettysburg too. The whole album though, I didn't look at the listening notes until I listened to the album. And then I went back again and then again. I feel like this could really be like a stage play or like a film. I just feel like it's very visual to me, and you feel the emotions. One of my favorite songs, Hold Steady, we'll talk about that. The new single is awesome. But The Devil May Care, but Jesus Knows is one of my most favorite songs on the album, personally.
Funny, that's the first song I wrote when I was there.
Wow. It just, as soon as I heard that, I was like, holy cow. And the fact that it came right after Hold Steady, it's like, that was the way the album flows. That's what's so amazing about this. When I talk about transcendence, it's like, this is like a entire production. This is an album that is, I know you're putting a single out and you have to do that kind of stuff in the world, but I really want people to understand this is an album that is telling a story. I remember when Ry Cooder did Jesse James, and I think there's a whole other, I just call it the Jesse James album, but I don't think it's called that. But it's like this whole history of Jesse James. And it's like, wow. And he put you in this time zone. You've done it where it's bringing us up to front and center. Where have we changed in things now? Right? You're bringing some of the things that have happened in the past to the present. Where are we now? And that's by the tone of music. And for me, that's what I hear. So I think it's interesting. But The Devil May Care, that's where to me I went, this has to be visual. We want like a movie out of this. Have you thought of it being a play or like, I don't know, if something could happen visually with it, it would be awesome.
Well, I've got a performance art piece. It was a solo show, but it incorporates live music and movement and a lot of other things that sort of tells the story. It goes even further, not necessarily into Gettysburg, but the idea of blackbirding and getting blackbirded and how this has been happening to Black people ever since we've, come to America in different forms. I just sort of take you all the way through it in the various ways blackbirding has happened to us through generations. And a lot of it is really interesting and historical and funny, and you just go through the gamut. I did that as I was a playwright in residence with the WP Theater, 2022 to 2024. And I did a staged off-Broadway reading, directed by Lorna Ventura. Let's see. Yeah, in 2024 in the spring. And I'm hoping to put it up again. Sinead Sidney Nichols was my co-conspirator. She's an incredible performer, incredible dancer. And Ayodele was the banjoist and the guitarist who really brought it to life orally. Just the three of us had so much fun on stage. So I'm hoping to revive that again and hoping that it gets a run sometime in the near future. I'm not sure about film or video. That's something I'm going to have to, work on. We'll see. Aside from that mini documentary, which I think would probably answer a lot of questions. But I've got ideas. I've got ideas that I'm working towards.
Yeah, tell the mini documentary, that's something you're going to be putting out and people watch for that. I mean, if you go to queen-esther.com, you can learn more. Let's talk about the album cover because I know that's part of you. This is done. I mean, and then when you look at the back of the album and everyone, again, the album comes out in February, you will be able to pre-order it. But you want to go get the first single now, again, called Hold Steady. You go to Bandcamp for that, or is it just Bandcamp for the single, or does it go everywhere?
No, October 3rd, that single will be available digitally everywhere.
Gotta go get it. I'm telling you. It's that's got an old school vibe to it, man. I'm like, yeah, a little Sam and Dave vibe and all kinds of good stuff in there. But Hold Steady, I want to get into the song, because that's important that we do that. But I want to go back to the album cover itself because the front and then how you do the back.
There's over 100 museums in New York City. And even when my name was Brokey McPoverty, when I was just broke, I could still go to the Met Museum and give them a quarter or whatever I had and wander around. I think that it's important to wander through museums because in that way, I can look at something that's great. I can be in the presence of greatness, things that are certifiably great, that have withstood the test of time. Those paintings, that's really important to me. And I think they carry an energy and they reverberate off of the painting and onto me. I mean, maybe that's just my low country leanings, but I've always believed that. So I don't know art the way, so many of my friends do who are artists and curators and everything else, but I have a healthy appreciation for art and visual art, especially. So in my wanderings through museums, I have my favorites, and one of them is Barclay Hendricks. He's a portraitist from the 60s, 70s. He passed away recently, I think maybe 2017, and I am completely and utterly in love with his work. He has a portrait called Lawdy Mama. It's actually a portrait that he did of his cousin, and that's what inspired this cover. It is her. She's got this huge afro, but she's standing in front of a golden arch. And the golden arch is really the framework for the picture itself. I'm wearing this simple dress. It's just very elegant and understated. But immediately, because of my wanderings through, the museums, I understood the cloisters, for example, where all that medieval art is, with the extension of the Met. I saw the religious iconography behind it. I understood that shimmer and that gold and what that meant, how that was really an indication of the divine. And I wanted to capture something of that on the album cover for me, for a lot of different reasons. This was photographed, by the way, by Angelica Das, who's just amazing, really, really brilliant. She and I met when I did a residency with TED, actually, 18, and I ended up giving a TED talk about country music, the history of country music, actually the true roots of country and bluegrass. So on the album cover, the backdrop is haint blue, which is variations of this pale blue-green. And I'm also wearing haint blue as I'm standing in front of this golden arch. And I guess I look like I've been startled, or I'm looking over to my left at something that's startling me or that's got my attention. The reason why I use the color haint blue, of course, is because of the West African tradition that was passed down through the Gullah Geechee Nation, the prevailing belief is that evil spirits can't travel across large bodies of water. So
Mm.
you're uh, trying to trick them into believing that there's a large body of water in front of your house that is your porch, so they won't come inside. So when you go through the Low Country, you'll see people with window frames, with porches that are painted blue, with blue bottles in the trees or blue bottle
Mhm.
trees in the front yard or in their garden. The blue bottles of this dark cobalt blue capture evil spirits when the wind blows and the sunlight destroys them. That's the prevailing.
Spirit trees, aren't they called spirit trees? I mean, they
Um,
do them in the desert too.
no, I don't know. I don't know them to be called spirit trees.
Yeah, maybe that's a desert thing. I don't know, but I remember calling them spirit. Could just be me. I don't know. I call them spirit because it's like you like lure the spirits in there and let the sun zap them out. Like.
Yeah, the sunlight is a cleanser. Yeah, so that's the idea. So
Mm.
you have to remember that indigo was a huge crop, uh,
Hmm.
Charleston, along with rice and cotton, specifically cotton from the Sea Islands. But that died out with the boll weevil in the 1920s. So this color being one of protection and the arch giving the air of divinity was really important. I'm putting forth the idea of the Black woman as sacred. And that sacredness, of course, is in reference to the Eve gene, which is not a gene in your body. It was an actual person. Mitochondrial Eve is what she's called.
Oh,
She's
wow.
an African woman who lived about 200,000 years ago. According to scientists, not me, but science, all humans today, all modern humans, carry her mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is only passed down from mother to child. So I have to say, no, she was not the first woman that was ever born that ever lived. No. And she's certainly not the only woman that lived during her time. The thing that separates her from everybody else is that her female line is the only one that produced an unbroken maternal lineage to everyone that exists now.
So, yeah, growing up in Kenya, like even the Rift Valley in that area was like there and growing up, I was always taught like this is the birthplace of humanity. Like we
Yeah.
come from here. This is it.
So genetic scientists have done the heavy lifting and they have mapped out ancient migration passages and they have proved that everyone has a common ancestor in Africa. And then they broke off and migrated to other parts of the world. But it started there.
I love that you bring this up because I get in trouble because I know wildlife really well. Nancy and my mom and that's why we're in Africa doing a lot with wildlife, especially my mom. She's a wildlife artist and worked with Elsa the Lion Lady, Joy Adamson, rehabilitating wildlife and studying them and also really annoying all the scientists because you can communicate with animals and you're not supposed to. BS. Anyway, we've got family in our ancient history that were burned at the stake for being witches for talking to animals. Go figure. But anyway, live in Kenya and this belief was so strong and migration would happen with people just over this is when you want water and this is where the water is. So this time of year we're going to get water. We're going to move our camp this way. And so we did. And so when you go back to, I was like a little white kid living with two different black tribes. So, when I say we, yes, I was chasing down and doing what all the other kids were doing. And that was working. It's not all play at all. It's work to survive and live out there. And now coming over here and everyone's talking about what's going on with immigration and everything. And I'm not here to get political, but I always go, well, like people migrate according to their DNA. If you look at all the indigenous cultures of America, the ones that were here, a lot of them were migrating between Mexico and what we call United States and Canada and all of that. Everyone was moving around according to what they needed. And then when I look at Mexico, I go, well, Mexico, this was their land for so many years. This was their place. And I think physically, if you look at like how whales migrate in the water, right? That's why I go back to the animal thing. Animals migrate according to needs. according, like whales migrate south, in December, you can go to San Diego and see whales migrating down to the Sea of Cortez. And then, they go back up to the Bering Sea at a different time. And it's about where they mate, where they, the mama and babies get together. They, take care of their young away from the men and all that stuff. And so animals are migratory. Humans have been for centuries. We've always been nomadic. So why wouldn't we think that we're not nomadic now? So, like, to me, I'm one of those people who just wish we didn't have to have a passport or anything. But I know that's altruistic and everything. But I believe our bodies actually physically have some kind of emotion that is tied to our DNA that makes us move. I haven't looked into the whole science of it. I just always thought I was nuts. So I'm glad you've got some kind of evidence here, because I always thought I was just weird. But I really do know humans have been moving for years. That's in a given, but we're always looking at the immediate space. But I believe, like, why wouldn't people want to come home from Mexico to the place that their ancestors were? I'm going to get in trouble for this now, aren't I? It's okay.
Well, I think life is a political act. So there's no way that you cannot be political. But yeah, there are ancient human migration routes that they have mapped out from Africa that branch out into all over the world.
Yeah.
It's a cradle of civilization. But I'm insisting that the Black woman is sacred because she's the only one that carries the Eve gene. And which makes sense. There's a big argument about this. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who are perfectly willing to tell me that I'm wrong, but that doesn't really make any sense because out of the Black woman, you get all this varietal.
Yeah. And okay.
One thing is absolutely that cannot be argued, undisputed. From a Black woman's womb, modern humans exist. There's no arguing that. And so because of that, there should be a certain measure of consideration that's given to Black women as sacred. And I think that the amount of unwarranted aggression that Black women receive in just everyday, ordinary life speaks to this.
Well, okay. So I interviewed a wonderful lady, also South Carolina area, and she was tracing her ancestral roots in the mounds. Her ancestors were in the mounds, which are Native American, indigenous and Native American, but then she's Black. And she's like, she has the DNA proving she's Black and Indian in these mounds. And so she got on this thing and started covering all the mounds. And I remember we put her in once a year, it starts up. I have to go and fight people off her interview on YouTube because they're like, Indians are not Black. And I'm like, listen, you got Africans and Mexicans are all connected. You got Indians and Africans mixed together. Just stop it. Don't think. And she's trying to go to powwows. She's a healer. She's a yogi. She's, all these amazing things. And even in powwows, sorry, y'all, but it's true. She is kind of shunned because she's African American. And,
African American encompasses a lot. When you say African American, that's a very broad, that's bigger than just Africa. That encompasses, and you have to remember there's a certain amount of anti-Blackness that runs all the way through all cultures all over the world. Which I'm kind of addressing when I say this. If you really go back to the source, it's Blackness, and that should be respected. That's really the point that I'm making. I know lots of Black Indians, and there's been a longstanding history of Black folk and Native Americans in this country. Not all of it good, and that's got its own reckoning. Black Mexicans, for example, just received, I think within the past 5 years, their own designation as citizens of Mexico. And they've been there for hundreds of years with everyone ignoring them. Millions of Black Mexicans.
Yeah, Afro-Latinos. Yeah, people started arguing with me. I'm going, it's right here. Look at this, I mean, because, well, look, slavery took people around the world, right? And not in the way that they wanted. This is not a cruise ship. Thank you. This is not what we wanted. We, here it is. It was like human harvesting that happened. And so it's like cultures came through. I mean, if you look at what the Spanish did, I mean, it's like, this is world history. And yes, everybody rubs each other the wrong way at a certain point, and it does have reckonings like you're talking about. And I think Gettysburg was one of those pivotal things that happened in our country never, like you said, just was, oh, that's the all end all. Like World War One, they said that's the world to end all world wars. Well, World War Two cropped up. World War Three, hey, could be looming the way things are going, so we have to realize humans just continue arguing for years, and that's part of it, but sadly, cruelty and bloodshed happen through it and trauma,
Well, couple of things that you have to remember or that you have to keep in mind when you talk about slavery. First of all, slavery has always existed
Mm,
throughout equity,
yep,
or always been slavery in the world. But the thing that made slavery different, the transatlantic slave trade, was different than slavery that had ever happened before throughout time. The thing that made it different is that for the first time, your skin made you a slave, not your social status, not this, not that. It made you enslaved. You were enslaved because of your blackness. That had never happened before. Just looking at you made you a slave. In the same way that people nowadays, just looking at someone makes them a criminal, makes them a liability, attaches all of these negative things just because of the way you look. That had never happened before in antiquity in Rome or in slavery in other parts of the world. And you also have to remember that there were lots of different kinds of slavery back then. There were debt slaves. For example, if you
mm-hmm.
have a lot of debt, you would be enslaved until you paid it off. There were war brides, for example. We have this village that's filled with men. And if we don't go over to that village and conquer it because they have mostly women, we're going to die out. So if you marry into my family, you're no longer a slave and you get to be my wife with all the privileges
Oh,
therein.
gross.
Well, super gross, but this is what they did. There's
Yeah,
lots of different kinds of slavery. And I don't necessarily think in Africa, when you had enslavement, that they were thinking that they were selling us into a kind of slavery that would see us as subhuman, as not fully
yeah,
human, as animals, as chattel.
right.
That kind of slavery didn't exist in Africa. It did not exist in any other part of the world before this. This
Yeah,
is something that Europeans cooked up, and it was so lucrative for so long. It just kept going. And the abuse, I mean, they haven't
yeah.
really touched on, I really don't believe they've touched on how horrible it really, really was.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I think the arts helps bridge things because sometimes it just becomes arguments and that doesn't really go far, but music, like this album will get under your skin and you'll start to really think, I think again, like having listening notes for people is amazing for them, though I think the album honestly carries such weight and it's a beautiful album and I really love this album. I know
Oh,
I'm
thank
kind of
you.
gushing over it, but I can't say the words, but I'm just like bleep, bleep, bleep when I started hearing it. And Nancy, my mom's sitting there, she's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Dude, listen to this." And no, she's not a dude; it's just a habit. But it it is. I'm from California, but I wasn't raised there. But anyway, you're raised in Africa, and truly, you do learn about what happens. I mean, but it has that, I think everyone in some way will identify with the emotion that's in there and the lyrics because it is about everything that goes in a battle and it could be an internal human battle, again, that
Well,
transcendence, there's so much of individuality and yet, here's this bigger story being told, through Gettysburg. And I think Can't No Grave Hold My Body Down. I mean, that also, the whole album, and all the different styles of music that you manage to put in there and you weave it, it's funny. I just did a thing on Carole King and she's airing as we record this. She's about to air her Tapestry, her album, right? But I'm going to
oh,
say like
great
this
album.
album is one of the best, right? But this album, you have created a tapestry of being able to take people into genres maybe they don't even listen to, give them a taste, and it just flows really well. And that is amazing to me is when albums can be listened to specific songs, like you've got your single Hold Steady, which we need to get to. But the ability to make everything flow really well, it's like a thing for me when I listen to an album where you find yourself like, I'm playing this and I don't want to hear anything from anybody. I don't want to do anything but sit and listen and be immersed. That's a well done album that really transports you and can flow you into. It's like taking a little canoe ride and you're seeing all these different exhibits, but you're feeling it emotionally. And you didn't know that you may like this or may like that. Or I think it's because I always say like an album is like you have to perfect the set list and you can't see the audience's faces to see if the set list is working. You have to judge that and get
Well,
that right, you know?
I follow a creative impetus that leans heavily on God. As long as it resonates internally with me on that level, then I know that I'm headed in the right direction. That's my North Star. I can't really pay any attention to what anyone else thinks or how they feel or what they want.
Mhm.
I really do have to follow that creative impetus. And that, for me, that comes from God.
You're going to the big one. Well, I think you can't not have spirituality in this. I mean, no matter what everybody believes,
You know,
spirituality carries you through
music
everything.
is as a spiritual conduit. I
For
think,
healing.
yeah, and that's why it was so important to make this record. I wanted it to be good medicine.
Yeah. You know what? I'm so glad you just said that because because you've got the undertones of blues and you've got some of the heaviness, right? But it didn't feel like you're going to bring me down. Like you know what I mean? Like when I told you going to Gettysburg for us was so overwhelming, we just had to sit down and breathe. Wow.
Trust me, it was overwhelming for me. There are no street lights on the battlefield. It is like a sheath of pitch blackness at night that you drive past. You're driving along the road. I don't know the name of the road off the top of my head, but it's the road that
Tawny
frame,
Town.
yeah, it's the road that frames the battlefield. And if there's no moon at all, if you're just looking up at a blue-black sky, it's like a wall of blackness. There's no lights, there's no street lights, there's no nothing. And you are literally walking around. It's like an Ellsworth Kelly painting of the picture black.
Wow. So you can understand what it was like back then,
Absolutely. If there's no moon, if all you have are stars, which is where the song Oh My Stars comes about. Because if you're lying there and if you're
I love that. We were talking about that yesterday. Nancy and I were talking about that, like lying in a field of stars. I was like, who writes that? Like, seriously,
I
that.
remember going to the wheat field. The wheat field is a part of the battlefield where the flag changed hands at least a dozen times during that particular skirmish. And when the smoke cleared, you could walk from one end of the field to the other and your feet would never touch the ground because it was piled so high with dead bodies. No one
It's
really
amazing.
talked about that. You know,
Want to know, as humans, we want to brush that off, right? It's kind of like what's happening now with our histories. Just brush it off. It didn't happen. We're the greatest. No
that
humans
blood in
are.
that ground isn't going anywhere. I think all of us have collectively seen enough CSI, Miami, Law and Order to know that you cannot wash blood away.
Mm.
You can certainly wash off the appearance of blood, and then someone comes in with some luminol and they spray the room and it looks like a Christmas tree just lit up. You cannot wash blood away. The blood, as
Yeah.
the song by Andre Crouch goes, the blood will never lose its power. It just won't. That's not how blood.
Macbeth, out
Um,
damn spot. Damn
Body is
spot.
the blood is the body. In many instances, we've seen this in court documentaries and whatnot. The blood that they find is considered to be a body when they cannot find the body. And in that way, in that spirit, the bodies are still out there. They have seeped into the soil. There's no getting around that. There's no getting over that. And there is no erasing it. And it's not just their bodies. I would direct your attention to sundown towns, thousands of which are still active in this country. There's a map, an interactive map. You can Google it and you can see sundown towns from Jersey to California. As a matter of fact, California has more registered hate groups than all of the South combined. Think about that.
Wow.
Yeah, there have
Wow.
been so many lynchings, and there are lynchings that are happening right now that people are ignoring. And they have happened at a steady pace since Reconstruction. all over the country, not just the South, where people were murdered simply for defending themselves. That's not going away either.
Mm. No.
Those bodies are still crying out for justice. None of that's going away. The Devil's Punch Bowl, I believe that's in Mississippi or Alabama. Thousands of people there who were murdered, basically. That's not going away. It's still there.
And that's a global thing too. Honestly, there's so much of that, of bloodshed, of just humans do some stupid, horrible stuff
Yeah,
and
but
think that
in other
you
parts
know,
of the world, they acknowledge these things, they honor these things.
Mhm.
Have you ever been to Berlin?
Nope.
Well, when you go to Berlin and when you're walking down the street, you will look down and you will see the streets lit up with blocks of gold. I can't remember off the top of my head the name of these blocks. There's a word for them. They're kind of art piece. Speaking of art, they're kind of living memorial. And each
Mm.
block is at a place in front of a building or an edifice where a family lived. It shows who lived there and where they were taken and guessing when they died. If they went to Dachau or, how old they were, the children that were taken. In one building, I remember going to meet a friend for coffee. They had pictures of these school children framed, outside the building and in the lobby, and they had their names listed where
Right.
they,
Yeah.
and it looks like the street is glowing. I think it's made of brass. I can't remember, but when the sun shines, all you see are these glowing blocks all over the city, not just in one place. And that's just one memorial that they have. They have so many. In the same way that Gettysburg is like an open air graveyard, Berlin is like an open air museum memorial to honor the dead, to apologize, really a constant apology for what happened during the Holocaust.
And this is something so huge to talk about because, like our parks, our national parks, right? We have over 400 units within our National Park Service. Of course, there's state parks, forests, national forests. There's so many public lands that we have in the country, but you can't look at nature without there being some kind of human history there. There's
For
not
sure.
one park that
And
does not have human history. And
if you do your due diligence, you can find out specifically what happened where and why. And if they're not making it obvious, that's okay. It's still the
up
information
to
is.
you.
And National Parks Arts Foundation really is doing the Lord's work. I don't know that I would have been able to do the deep dive that I did. And I mean, every single day I walked that battlefield. I sat amongst those ruins and I did not look away. I did not flinch. I took copious notes. I interviewed people. I took a lot of photos and video and I did this and I did that. But there's no real way that I could have just spent an afternoon as a visitor documenting all of that and taking all that in. I really needed that full immersion. And I'm grateful that I had a moment where I could do that. But, you could really explore just about any park. You could go to I could go to Hawaii and have a field day, honestly. Hawaii was my next choice because of the way Hawaii came to be a part of the United
Yeah.
States.
Why, that's a whole
A whole
and it's
other,
it's moving, right? Right now it's all moving just like the
well,
lava, right?
I don't know that we could even get into all of that the way I'd like to because it's so complicated. But basically,
Mm.
all of these white people showed up and said, "Hey, yeah, we're just gonna take over Hawaii because pineapples."
Plant
And everybody
pineapple.
said, "No, don't do that." Yeah, we're gonna do it. And they imprisoned their queen for like 24, 25 years. Just in-house imprisonment. Amongst the Hawaiians that I know, they do not consider themselves to be Americans at all. But that's another conversation. But
Yeah,
all of that,
well, I think you need to go apply. They have a residency out now. You got to go apply again and go
that
do
would
the
be,
residency there. Oh my gosh, that would be
a
epic.
whole thing
Oh, they
else.
have a sound studio right there in the house that you stay in. They
Oh,
have
that's
their own art
dynamite.
house. They have a recording studio. I mean, come on now. You got views of the ocean. It
That would
is
be crazy.
cool. I mean, it was like, yeah. And it's so interesting. We've done interviews with artists in residence for over 8 years every month, and we see artists go back and reapply and go to another one and another park. And I think Hawaii volcanoes would be super cool for you because it also talks about the people are resilient. And I think I think that's actually something I want to bring up about your album, because you touch on the heaviness enough to make you feel the heavy of what has gone down, but there is a really good feeling of resilience throughout. And I think that is the backbone of everything that makes it flow, is resilience. And there is hope and optimism, but it's not like fa la 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 la. We're not playing Pollyanna. It's like, yes, here's the grit and the dirt. You can't move forward in life if you do not understand the history, right? So when people go, well, why are people doing this and why are they that? Go to the history. Then you'll understand today. You have to go back to go forwards. It's just the rule. It is.
I think what people are acknowledging is the Black history. And when I say Black history, I mean all inclusive. So often when you're learning history in a classroom, they're only telling you a portion of what's happening. And they're telling you a portion, they're not giving you the full story, the complete story. Black history gives you the complete story. And when you hear it from that perspective, it illuminates so much inside of it. So that was really my push. A bigger part of the album is me telling this to you from my Black feminist Southern perspective, which most people don't really get a chance to experience.
Well, I love that, you talk about Atlanta side. Like if you're in Atlanta, like look at how I can't even drive through. None of us want to talk about the traffic in Atlanta, but that's a sign of progression, right? Look at what has happened that you would never even think, and look at the changes in the history of Georgia, even. I mean, how it is really changed. And I think that is that sign of progression. I mean, it's cool,
A mecca for Black people in terms of education, progress, business ownership. I'm talking about Reconstruction. As soon as we got...
Yeah, I was going to say, what about Black banking? Because that was I've done too many interviews on this, on what's going on with redlining and all that. But like, you have to have the funding at some point on anything. And that has been a huge hurdle for Black artists, homeowners, everything. And so when a place like Atlanta really flourishes, that means people got together and made it happen.
There were different points all over the country during Reconstruction where Black people flourished with their own towns. I mean, really, even before Reconstruction, during slavery, free Black folk got together and formed their own townships.
Allensworth, California is one of them. It's a state park. Allensworth, it's a Black
They
town.
did it all over the country. And the reason why they didn't grow and prosper is because white people got jealous and they went over and murdered everybody and burned everything down.
Well, dang.
Well, it's true. They can't erase that history either. That history still stands. It's Red Summer all over again.
Speaking of that, well, Red Summer, that ties into one of your songs too. Okay, we got Hold Steady is out now. October 3rd is the day. This is airing on October 3rd. I love this because, I heard from Queen Esther and I'm like, oh, we're about to do the show. And like, oh, her album comes out in February. So you're going to watch for that. I would say go to queen-esther.com. Also follow her on Bandcamp so you can be notified and you can pre-order and all those good things. Pre-orders are good, good, good. Hold Steady is out today though, right?
Yeah. Hold Steady is out as of October 3rd. The album comes out on the 6th of February, 2/6/26. See what I did?
Good numbers.
Yeah. We're going to have an album release party at Joe's Pub on the 21st of March with the whole band, all the bells and whistles, and there'll be a simulcast. So mark your calendars. That's
very cool. Now, before you go, Hold Steady tell everybody just a little snippet about it so they know what the song's about.
Every song is about the past and how it ties into the present. I wanted to bring everything forward. I didn't want to just open a history book and blow the dust off of it and spoon feed you some story, because the past is the present. So much of what happened then is the reason why we're here now. So Hold Steady is specifically about the pinhook, about the triangle, about the Battle of Little Round Top, and how if those moments had caved in at any point, we would have lost the war. Especially Little Round Top was really important. If they had gotten that vantage point, if they had won the Battle of Gettysburg, think about it, then they would have just gone on and taken Washington, D.C. They would have taken the White House and that would have been it. As a matter of fact, the thing that really broke me during the January 6th riots and insurrection when these people showed up um, and tried to take over the government is that a Confederate flag touched down in Washington, D.C. Someone actually brought a Confederate flag into the Capitol. That didn't happen during the Civil War. It never happened, but they let it happen then. Yeah. So that song is about that skirmish, but the song is also about what we have done as Black people and what we continue to do as Black people to stay up, stay ready, because America has been at war with us ever since we got here. Black people have been freeing themselves ever since we got here. We were slaves. No, we started freeing ourselves by any means necessary just as soon as we knew that we were enslaved. There are newspapers published all over the country from back in the day, looking for this enslaved person, looking for that enslaved person, just constantly trying to figure out where they are. So it's a survival code, of Black resilience, finding
Resilience. That's the
constantly.
word. That is the word. That is the
Yeah.
word.
So in a way, I'm giving you kind of a shorthand instruction manual. At one point, defending yourself when a white person went to hit you, that was a felony that was punishable by death. I mean, think about that. You couldn't
Yeah.
even defend yourself, you know?
Hold steady is such a good term because it is about that. It's like hold steady, you want to lose it, right? And that's with so many things in life. Anyone a woman could be going through abuse with her husband, right? And you want to just explode, kill him right there in the moment. There's a frying pan, I'm going to beat you over the head, whatever. Here's some poison, whatever, knock her husband out. I just think there's that moment where there is a hold steady is tread water. Don't react. Get together and make it work the way you need it to, so that you can, I'm just bringing up the woman having to get out, right? It is like you can't some do just are able to bail depending on their situation, but some can't. If you're kidnapped, you can't just bail. Like you can't be a bull in a china shop unless that is the way you need to be. And so that's going to be one of the percents. You have to be able to assess. You have to hold steady and assess, and then gather the facts, and then gather a plan, and then follow the plan and be ready for plan B, C, D, And so the hold steady for any situation, I think, is super crucial for how to move forward, because reaction sometimes is really important too. Immediate reaction is important, but you have to have that little second of sussing the scene out. Is this my best way out or best outcome, whether it's right or wrong, or you know what I mean? When you're in trouble, not whether it's you made the trouble or not, you have to look at your best way out, and
I
then
understand
there's
what you're saying.
change.
And the Black community hold steady or standing steady, really allows you to thrive in the face of extreme degradation.
And not walking backwards. You're not going to take a step backwards in standing up.
Exactly. I mean, you're really thriving in spite of the circumstances that are around you, which is the story of Black people in America.
Yeah.
As Maya Angelou says, and still like air, we rise.
I love her. Yeah. No, it's really true. And that's the point. There's a thing of not being reactive and then also just standing there.
What happened when Black women said we're resting after Kamala Harris didn't get elected, and then everyone decided to rest? But that was a directive from Black women, from the 92% of Black women that voted for her.
Oh my gosh.
That's the way of holding steady.
When you look at politics, Black women have a vote, a very strong vote, if they can get the vote, right? If depending on who, what, and where, and what state and everything. So many weird little laws in different states. But Black women are so powerful together,
Yeah, but white women have always voted Republican, except for two instances in his entire history of them being able to vote. That was LBJ's second term and Bill Clinton's second election. So those are the only times they voted Democrat. This is true. I'm telling you a fact. They have always voted Republican. If they voted in the same way that and the same numbers that Black women did at the same percentages, we wouldn't be having
Oh,
this
as a whole.
conversation.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna say because I didn't do any of that. I didn't do like I'm like wasn't
Well, I
here
guess
doing that.
your sisters, because collectively, 92% of women voted the way that Black women did. She would have gotten elected. There are more women in this country than men. Women make
Wow.
up more than 50%, something like 51 or 52% of the population.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
in my humble opinion, they're voting against their interests when they vote a certain way, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean the
About
whole
that.
politics of women even being president, like New Zealand can have it, and it's like
Well, we can totally have it if we vote for it. People are
uh,
having the presidents right now that they voted for. All I'm saying is there's more women than men.
that
There's more
is
women than
just a
men.
very good fact. That's a good fact for everyone to think about.
Yes.
Everybody, you know that this podcast is also airing on our Women Making History podcast because that show is all about celebrating women of the past, the present, and the future because the
Oh,
past and the
awesome.
present make the future.
Oh,
So
sure.
yeah, our women's history show. It started actually was inspired. So funny. It was inspired a year and a half ago or so. So funny because Nancy and I travel the country full time documenting parks, and we were here and we did this interview with Tanya from the National Parks Arts Foundation and something technically just ate the file. It was not, it was, here's 5 seconds of Tanya saying something really good because she always has something wonderful to say. And we're like, oh my God, this has to be out in the next hours or so. What are we going to do? Time zone differences. And we're like, it's Women's History Day. Let's just start a women's show. And it was Tanya Ortega of the National Parks Arts Foundation that actually instigated that show. And she didn't know it until it aired. And I said, well, thank you. You made us start a whole new podcast channel of women's history. And we have aired a lot of shows we've done in the past and the ones that are current. And it's so important. And the National Parks Arts Foundation, that's what I was saying at the beginning of the show, of this episode, is they're so good about being able to, people are able to bring families to some of the residencies, depending on,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that for women has been a huge thing,
Well,
Oh, she is.
this is her brainchild. This was her idea. And when I got to go to Gettysburg, no one was happier for me than her, which was really, really lovely. I think she sensed that I would create something like this. She couldn't know how I would do it or what it would sound like, but she knew that it would be tremendous. She had a great deal of faith in me, and I'm really grateful for her,
Oh.
and for the program.
She knows, and they know. I mean, you had to go through a jury selection process to get the residency, and it's such a huge thing. But then when you get it, she knows. Like, it is a huge deal to get a residency. And I please people that do apply, and if you don't make it through, try again and try again and try again. I
Hey,
mean,
I did it on my first try, frankly. I think that
oh, see?
nope, that was not my first attempt at getting that. I think it might have been my second or third, but it was definitely more than once that I applied.
Worth it enough to do. And then you do it and you realize what a huge gift a month of just like, I'm doing this. And that's a hard thing. I also realize for some artists is to just go off for a month, but like them being so cool about family and things like that. And also understanding the cultural history of then and now is also a beautiful thing. It is, I don't know, I adore doing these shows every month and going through right now as we put this retrospective together. When you emailed me about the album, I was like, stop the presses, everything. What? This
That's
is the most
funny.
amazing album. This masterpiece has come
Thank
together
you.
and it is, I like stop everything. I'm having a really bad day of internet. Well, I don't even want to go through what we've been going through on website stuff and everything. And I'm like, stop everything. This is so much better than what we're dealing with and so good. And I just, when you think it was 2020, you were there 2000. Here's the thing. Some residencies expect the album to be out the next year. And and the foundation, the National Parks Arts Foundation, allow an artist to do what needs to be done in their timeline with what needs to happen. The artistic process is not something to be said, you need to get it done like the egg in a timer. That's not
Well,
how it
yeah, that's
works.
what's not really, I had a friend, the trombonist, musician J. Walter Hawks. I don't know why he called me while I was in residency there. I think maybe it was a gig, I don't know, but we ended up talking and he's from Mississippi. He couldn't believe where I was. And he gave me the best piece of advice. He said, "Don't think that you have to finish something in a month. You should gather everything that you need. Just be like a detective at the scene of a crime and just gather all the bits and pieces, knowing that you're creating a well of information that you can dip back into for more whenever you need it. Just organize it that way. And then when you come home, you can sort through it." Which was wild because my first day back in New York City was the first day of the pandemic. So
Oh,
I literally
wow.
put down my luggage. A friend dropped me off. I had a big trunk. I put that down. I went to the grocery store and stood in
Oh, hell.
a long line to get into the grocery store and then shop and then a long line to pay for what I got. I was in line for so long that my permanent boyfriend, who was working in Hoboken, literally left work early, came home, and I was still in line.
Whoa.
He
Amazing.
went and got, "Oh, I should get this, I should get that," with the shelves clearing out and got what he felt he needed. And then finally, we checked out, got all of our things, bought what we needed, and hermetically sealed ourselves at home, which was ideal because then I could sit there with all of what I gathered at Gettysburg and sift through what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say it, and really dig into those lyrics and refine all of what I was putting together. I mean, there's a lot of songs that didn't make the cut. Maybe I'll do a part two. I don't know.
Please do. I hope you come back on once the album is released because there's so much in this album. Like
I
when
would
I say it's
love
a
to.
masterpiece because it just, this is something I'm music lovers, history lovers, anybody with a pulsing heartbeat. This is meaningful and beautiful and resilient. And yes, it goes deep and dark because you need that. And that's life. And that's what happened, and that's where the history is. But it's the human story, and we can lose our signs, but we are not going to lose our stories. And I think that's the beauty of these residencies and the beauty of arts and
Oh, yeah.
artists like you, Esther. I
And
really mean it. It's a
listen,
big
for
deal.
all of the artists that are out there that may be listening, not only is the residency really giving you the space that you need to create, but they pay you.
Hmm.
Don't forget that part.
There is a stipend, and it also goes according to residency. So watch for that. So I'm going to put that as a thing. But they do have a stipend for most
It's not
residencies.
nothing.
Yeah, no, this is huge. They support you as best you can. And
That
you get to see things that the regular traveler, or I hate to use the word tourist, but it's tourists going into a park. You can go into the archives. You can see diaries that other people can't see unless they go through a whole procedure.
that's
There
true.
is so much red tape that happens with this. And it's honestly, the National Parks Arts Foundation knows how to work with parks, deal with the red tape because it's government. And then what an artist can do. And an artist goes, "Hey, I want to do this." And they're going, "Oh, that's really nice. But, you're in a national park and, there's this rule, that rule. Let's see what we can do." And let's not talk about the insurance that it is this huge thing that they really
Yeah.
facilitate. And
It
I
it
don't
can
know
be
how Tanya
complicated.
has the
Yes.
patience to do any of it, but she does. She does. She
No,
makes it work.
it's a fantastic program, really. I don't know that me sitting in my apartment in Harlem could have come up with all of this. I really needed the full immersion. And when I talked to Walt and he said what he did, it really kind of took the pressure off. And I was able to take in even more than I would have ordinarily. I wasn't sitting there thinking anymore, I've got to finish this. I was thinking, let me gather as much as I can, which made the experience even richer.
Well, I love that you put this album out right now because, we're right there at the closing end of this retrospective. Now I'm going to have to shift pages, but it's a cool shift. And I was like, oh, this is so perfect. It's like we can put the closing touch of Gettysburg together with this. It's so perfect. It's just perfect. Tanya has allowed us to take time on the retrospective, just like she does artists in residence, understanding that something that is going to be its true self, it needs time. And I, at one point, started rushing it. And she's like, Lisa, I didn't tell you to rush it. Why are you rushing? Like, she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, and her and my mom share the same birthday. I got to let that
Oh,
little
that's
thing
really
out on the
sweet.
air. No, we all have a call in, and they're both bulls in china shops, but the most patient people. And that's why they can be bulls. They can go through red tape really well, but and smartly. They're amazing humans. And yeah, I think, it's this, there was this thing. And I was like, as soon as this happened, I'm just stoked. I haven't even used that word stoked since we lived in California. My God, what have you done to me, Queen Esther? But
Funny.
the album is, I mean it is so meaningful and so good. And you're going to turn people onto other music. You're going to turn people into listening in a different way. And you get right in our skin and into our soul. And it's a beautiful masterpiece that, like I said, it's beautiful, but dark at times. But the resiliency is the core. So thank you for what you do in music. Thank you for keeping history alive from the past, present, the future. So hopefully
Hey,
our
thank
future
you
will
for
be
listening.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.
And everyone, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Go check it out.
All
And
artists, please. Your enthusiasm
yes.
is infectious. I can only hope that everyone is as excited about this album as you are.
I am. Are you kidding me? It's the best thing that happened. Yesterday I was like, oh my God, thank God something good is happening in the world. Are you kidding me? That was like, you made my day and more. Everyone, also queen-esther.com is the website to go to. Keep up with her there. Follow her on Bandcamp and all that good stuff. And I will put all the links in the episode notes that you need. And again, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. And let's talk when the album is out. Thank you
Yeah,
so
I would
much.
love. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Park show with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Learn more about their amazing park artist residency programs. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.